Tyler here from the Garage Warrior podcast, and I'm so excited to have on the show today Abel James, the Fat Burning Man. We're going to teach you how to become a fat burning man yourself on this podcast. Abel James is a nutrition expert and a really awesome dude. So without further ado, let's take it over to my interview with Abel James.
Abel James, the Fat Burning Man, thanks for coming on the call today. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Tyler.
My pleasure. I'm really excited to have you on the call. For those of us who don't know anything about your story, Abel, why don't you give us a little bit of background on kind of where you started and how you came to where you are as the Fat Burning Man?
Yeah, you bet. So I've always been really interested in health in general. I was raised that way. My mom's a holistic nurse practitioner, and she had her own practice for a while. And anytime I got sick when I was a little kid, she was rubbing me all over with smelly balms and tinctures and just kind of weird herbs that she was wagging in my face. And so I've always kind of had a slant toward alternative thinking when it comes to diet and health. And that led me down the path of being a vegetarian on and off for years. And that was fine for a while, but once I got into my 20s, I started gaining weight. I definitely had some gut issues, although I didn't know at the time. Started to have inflammation, weight gain, and all these issues that I had never had before, like, kidney stones was one that was just absolutely terrible and ruined my life for a while. My brother also. And so it all came to a head when I came home one night and my apartment building and everything I had was up in a 30-foot wall of flames, just completely obliterated, gone. And it was after that my health really went downhill, gained some more weight, was feeling really down about myself, trying to get my life back in order. And I decided that with all these things out of my control, the one thing that I really could focus on and learn about and kind of master was my own health and learning about the truth behind all this stuff. And once I started digging into research in medical journals and all of that, I found that the truths were espoused to me as a vegetarian weren't necessarily in line with reality. And I learned a lot of other things that are completely counter to what you'd read in traditional diet magazines or fitness magazines when it comes to losing fat and gaining muscle. And they actually came from more like the underground bodybuilding circuit, not the drugs, but the actual protocols that they have when it comes to training and diet. And that led me down the path to today, which we can talk more about as you'd like.
Awesome. I was a vegetarian too for several years, and I did pretty fine on it, but my wife ended up getting just terribly sick.
Really?
We ended up going to a functional medicine doc, and they were like, you got to eat meat. And within 2 weeks, she was 100% fine. I mean, they're ready to take out part of her colon, right?
Oh, my gosh.
So it's amazing, and you're just so right. The truth in this stuff is so different than what you really, really think it is or what you're led to believe it is. Well, what prompted you to share your story with everybody? Because you started learning after your house went up in flames. What prompted you to really spread the word?
I think it was as I was learning it, I decided to write a book about the things that I had learned. And they're so, like I said, they're so different, completely opposite of what I was trying to do before, which is low fat, right? Low fat, high carb, lots of healthy whole grains and all that nonsense, which turns out not to be the case at all. And so it was when I found these things out and really accepted them as my own truths, and then experienced the crazy results, crazy good results that happened after I worked them into my habits, I decided that everyone needs to know this. There's so much misinformation put out there about, the good things about grains or the bad things about meat, bad things about fats. Now what I do when I wake up in the morning is I have heavy cream in my coffee. I eat butter by the stick sometimes when I'm really hungry and I don't have other options. I am spooning coconut oil into my mouth. I'm eating so high fat. And my doctors, even as far back as before I fired the traditional doctors that I had, when I'd walk in, they'd be like, wow, your biomarkers are absolutely off the charts, fantastic. What are you doing? And I'd tell them, I'm eating tons of fat, I'm doing all this stuff, and they're just like, oh, it can't be that. You need to stop that immediately. Right? So I decided to spread the word because obviously if doctors aren't going to do it, if conventional media isn't going to do it, someone needs to. And it's people ask me, my friends are just like, wow, what did you do? You look so much better. How can I do this? And so it was just kind of that. It was trying to tell people on a large scale. And the reality is it's so cool, like you're doing with your podcast. It can be as simple as talking on the phone or like sitting at your desk, and you can reach literally millions of people. So I feel like it's kind of my duty, and one of my talents is, talking to people. And so having an interview show about stuff that I really care about and I think the world needs to know just seems like a natural fit.
Absolutely. Well, we're all grateful that there's so many people out there sharing what they've learned. And I think that anybody with a decent interested mind is really coming to the same conclusions as when they really dig deep enough. So that's pretty cool.
Totally.
So what does a fat-burning man eat, and how does that differ from the mainstream?
Yeah, so as I was touching on a little bit earlier, it's not typical eating, which is fine because it's way more delicious. And I was actually talking to someone else pretty recently, and you can probably relate to this too. When you're a vegetarian, like, that's hard, right? It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of effort, and the payoff isn't always there. And so when I compare the way that I eat now to the way that I was trying to eat before, which was healthy, like when I would have pizza, I would try to get a whole wheat crust, and I would take paper towels or napkins and put them on the top to like get all the grease off. That was, that was like healthy eating for me, which is totally absurd, in retrospect. But this is so much easier. So on a typical day, often I won't eat in the morning. Some days I will if I'm really feeling hungry or if I worked out hard the day before. But often I won't eat until 10 in the morning, usually around like 12 noon is when I have my first meal. And I totally love eggs. I'm all about them. I have them a little bit of heavy cream, bacon fat, avocado, and I tend to have a green smoothie at least a few times a week, which for me, I love kale. There's some apple in there, usually just water, maybe a little bit of stevia, some cinnamon, cacao nibs, other fun stuff that you can throw in there like flax, all that. And then for dinner, I think compared to most kind of like paleo ancestral people, I'm heavier on the fat for sure. So I'll have like fatty cuts of meat, or I'll have a little bit of a beef liver, or I love chicken wings from pastured chickens and that sort of stuff. So, I mean, it's a really fun way of eating. I finish it off with dessert, which my girlfriend Allison, we actually just put out a dessert cookbook. So we've been eating tons of like rum balls and cheesecakes and chocolate concoctions for the past few months.
That sounds fantastic.
Which has been awesome. And I mean, I haven't gained weight. Actually, I've gained muscle. And you can really eat some pretty amazing stuff as long as you're doing it in this specific way, which is
right.
You can't have your conventional cake and eat it too. You know what I mean? So
sure.
All of this backfires if you're still shoving, like little Debbie's down your throat.
Right. So it sounds like the root foundation to what your approach is just eating real food from nature in the highest quality you can.
Yeah, that's right.
That's awesome. I love that. How important to you is high quality food when we're looking at, if it's organic, if it's all natural, if it's grass fed? Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll just start by saying personally, I hardly ever stray from that. I try to eat the highest quality foods every single time I put food into my mouth, and I encourage everyone else to do the same. And actually, that was in my own experience when I went from being overweight to being like totally ripped. That was the biggest change that I made. It wasn't even, like eating more fat or eating more protein or less carbs or anything like that. It was changing the way that I thought about the quality of my food. Because when you go into the supermarket, pretty much all that stuff is junk. If you stick to the outside of the supermarket and you're looking at the fresh veggies and produce, especially organic ones, if you can find grass-fed meat, this stuff is what's really going to make the change for you. Your body can't really absorb nutrients from all these crappy protein shakes, protein bars, synthetic vitamins. Usually have a hard time in your system. Your body doesn't really know what to do with them. And so what they have is like all these dead foods with vitamins sprayed back in. And these are vitamins that, like I said, your body might not be able to absorb. You compare that to eating like an apple or kale from your backyard. And this stuff, your body knows what to do with it. It knows how to assimilate the nutrients from that food. And as a result, you're going to feel better. You're going to look better. You're going to, and a lot of people ask me about cleansing and detoxes. Your body is built to do that. It's supposed to do that on a daily basis, not on some like crazy, 10-week long juice fast. It's supposed to be doing this constantly. And what eating high quality foods, especially roughage veggies, allows you to do is do that constantly. So you're constantly having a clean system. That's what you really want to do.
Sure, that's awesome information, and people really do need to think about where they're getting their food from. My favorite phrase when I'm consulting with people is, you are what you eat. So if the cow eats garbage and you eat the cow, you're still eating garbage, right?
Exactly. Yep.
So you got to get that high-quality food in. You mentioned having bacon and eggs and stuff for breakfast, and you're singing to my heart because I have that every day for breakfast as well. Or not every day, but most days for breakfast I like to have my bacon and eggs. But what about cholesterol? What about saturated fat, Abel? What are we to do about that?